Tank Dell. Like, this is not a team that's a poverty team at wide receiver right now. The depth obviously is an issue because from those two guys at wide receiver, the next guy, Xavier Hutchinson or Robert Woods, depending on what they're looking for, whether it's experience or maybe, slightly more explosiveness with a younger guy. I think the thing that they miss with Nico, Seth, is there's nobody else in this roster that's like Nico Collins, like that has that big, physical, over-the-middle presence where a play for a normal receiver is designed to get you 12 yards. He gets you 17 yards because he plows over two guys in the process.
Right, yeah, and it's also on when, teams are playing all this cover two, trying to make you just nickel and dime your way down the field. It helps a lot when every now and then you dust a team yards on Nico Collins touchdown. That ends up being the difference in the game, is that you're able to get those shots. The Texans have not been able to just sustain these drives going 5 and 10 yards at a time down the field without shooting themselves in the foot or what have you, or just, getting stuffed in the run game. So Nico is the antidote for a lot of that. The way I think we feel about the Texans right now offensively and why there's frustration that they just do not feel like they're running on all cylinders. The perfect example is the fact that we'll point out to the way defenses are playing them and how it's limiting the passing game and the explosiveness of the offense, and yet Nico Collins was leading the league in receiving yardage. So, okay, well, it's not completely shutting it down. Thank God you've got Nico at least. Mm-hmm. Now, if there was ever a week that you got to clean up all this stuff, you got to stop it with the penalties. Hey, you were fine, and then all of a sudden you plopped them all down in the third quarter, and they all happen all at once. And CJ makes a couple of uncharacteristic bad plays 2 series in a row in the fourth quarter. You can't be as inconsistent as that. Now this week, I don't care if it's the best team in the league you're playing or the worst, you've got to clean that stuff up. And maybe this will be exactly the kick in the butt that they needed to really dial in and focus and get all the other stuff right. And however much less mental bandwidth is spent on trying to get Nico those shots that have been so vital, maybe that gets focused on.
Just, and a few more thoughts on the Nico thing. I think this is a big reason you get Diggs, is not just for what the ceiling looks like with all these guys. I think Diggs was Tank and Nico injury insurance to some degree as well, because Diggs doesn't get hurt. Like, Diggs is a rock. He answers the bell every Sunday. I think this too, as we're through 5 games, we're lauding the Texans about the value they got in Nico's contract extension. Boy, Nico's he's outside the top 10 now for top paid wide receivers. Boy, when he signed this, he was like 6th or 7th on the list. This thing is going to age really, really well. Maybe we should have factored that in a little bit more. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Nico missed 3 games last year. In that, even though it was a great season for him, he played in 15 games, but one of them was the Jets game where he was gone after the first series. So he basically missed 3 games last year. He missed 7 games the year before. He missed 3 or 4 games his rookie year. And maybe unlike the marquee wide receivers that are getting 30, 32, 35 million, you got to factor in with Nico that the body of work so far, and we're here again in year 4, is that the guy's probably going to miss at least 20% of the season with something, and that gets factored into the price. That's
where I think when immediately, as soon as Nico is out on IR, you're thinking, okay, here's Devontae Adams, right? Well, go take a crack. I think the Devontae Adams signing was Stephon Diggs, and that's this is exactly what they would have planned, that at some point you're going to lose. And they've already, they lost Tank Dell, and you still have 2 guys on the potential is, we're talking about, okay, is Xavier Hutchinson probably just going to be the guy that gets more targets? It would seem so based on last week and from the preseason, but also that maybe you start to see a different version of Stephon Diggs now that he and Tank Dell are going to be the guys that you're going to try to really affect the defense by sending them deep and what have you. That Stephon Diggs might really show up. It might work out perfectly for Stephon Diggs because he could have a 4-game window where, wow, he looks like a number 1 wide receiver if I ever saw one.
Yeah, he looks like Diggs.
And he ends up getting a contract somewhere else.
The guy, you're absolutely right. The guy that I've seen since Nico got hurt in the game, and especially the last 24 hours or so since the IR thing, the guy that I've seen most Texans talking about is Tank. Like, okay, maybe now this Tank really hasn't gotten go. He's made a few plays. He missed a game with a rib injury, so that's concerning. Tank, not the biggest dude in the world. He's going to be getting more work now, which means he's going to be getting hit more now as well. So, that just comes with the territory. But I think I agree with what you said on Diggs. The sense I get from the fan base is they're like, okay, now it's Tank time. The Tank needs to turn it up now, or the Texans need to involve Tank. Almost by definition, they need to involve Tank more. There's 10 to 12 targets available to different guys now.
And then also, look, Joe Mixon didn't practice yesterday. I'm dead inside when it comes to Joe Mixon turning. It's going to make a big, big difference. Yeah. That might be the real answer. How are you going to replace Nico Collins? With that huge running back, that's how we're going to replace That's how we're going to replace Nico Collins, and maybe it'll be a more complete offense. And then you'll get even more excited about the prospect of, oh wow, if Joe Mixon stays healthy, and when Nico Collins comes back, then we're really cooking with gas.
Yep, no doubt. Antonio Pierce, the coach of the Raiders, actually talked about Devontae Adams yesterday.